was 25 when this happened. For some background, I started smoking weed when I was a freshman in high school. I continued smoking weed regularly up until the age of 25. By the end of my senior year in high school, I had already met major drug dealers or plugs and had some really good connections, so I started selling weed, but then that escalated to other drugs too, and weapons as well. It's important to know that I never did anything else. I didn't even smoke cigarettes, only weed. Anyway, I became a big-time plug, and I was selling to a few small towns and big cities, so I was making good money. I would drive to Colorado whenever I was getting low, since weed wasn't legal in my state. One night, I was getting ready to go to Colorado when, let's call him Calvin, wanted to come along for the ride. Now, this wasn't weird since we had made many trips to Colorado together before, so thinking nothing of it, I allowed him to come with me. Anytime he'd come with me, he would usually take his car, and usually I would drive there and then he would drive on the way back. So fast forward to around 11 o'clock at night, and he messages me saying he's outside my house since we're gonna drive overnight. I got my duffel bag containing my change of clothes, my purse, and a backpack containing the money. I had approximately $25,200 in the backpack. Some of it was for shopping, and the rest was for dispensaries. As soon as I get outside, I see that he's already in the passenger seat, so I go around to the driver's side to put my stuff in the trunk. Once I got into the driver's seat, it was reclined all the way to the back because he's 5'10", 200 pounds, and I'm 5'1", 130 pounds. So naturally, when I sat in the seat, I was almost in a laying down position. At this point, I still had my driver door open, so I decided to reach for it to close it, then I would fix the seat to my liking. As soon as I reached for the door, 3 guys in ski masks with guns came up. One was at my door pointing a gun at my face. Let's call him Thing 1. The other was at Calvin's door pistol whipping him. Let's call him Thing 2. And then the other was at the front of the car with his gun pointed at us. And yeah, we'll call him Thing 3. As the other guy is pistol whipping Calvin, Thing 1 moved his gun past my face to also point it at Calvin. And that's when I saw my chance to get out of the car. Now, me being small and in the position I was in the car gave for the perfect opportunity to slip away out of the car, and I did just that. I made it to the trunk of the car, and I could hear Calvin screaming. No words, just screaming, and I was in so much shock that I was frozen in place. It was when Thing 3 then yelled at Thing 1, "Go get her!" This snapped me back into reality. And I tried to run, but Thing 1 grabbed me by my hair and pulled me back. Now, at the same time this is all happening, Calvin is no longer screaming, and Thing 3 hops in the driver's seat while Thing 1 and Thing 2 are trying to get me in the back seat of the car. I'm trying to fight back, but they're constantly slamming my head on the car. At some point, they had opened the door to the back of the car and continued to try and shove me in the car. In the midst of that, I had stepped on the edge of the curve, which caused me to slip and fall in the car. My upper body was on the floor of the back seat, and my lower body was outside the car. Now they're slamming the car door on my shins, and all I can think is, if I let them drive away with me in the car, I'm dead. Thing 1 then went around and pulled me in the car, while Thing 2 shoved my legs in as he hopped in the car. Now I'm in the car in between Thing 1 and Thing 2, while Thing 3 is driving away with Calvin in the passenger seat. I realize he's not moving, so I'm thinking he's either dead or passed out. I forgot to mention that the backpack I had with the money had a lock, and only I knew the code. As we're driving, they're telling me to give them the code, but I refuse. Yeah, I know this was stupid of me. Well, they just kept hitting me and yelling, "You're gonna die tonight! Now give us the damn code!" All while pointing their guns at me. I managed to reach through the opening between the driver and passenger seat and jerk the steering wheel as hard as I could to one side, hoping and praying we would crash. But Thing 3 managed to control the car while I was then yanked to the back by one of them. After a short drive, we had arrived at this park that has a river running through it about 20 feet from the parking area and the woods across the street from it. They then got out of the car, yelling at me to also get out of the car, which I didn't want to do because I knew as soon as I did, they were going to beat me up until I was dead. I just held onto the steering wheel as they kept trying to pull me out of the car. Then one continued to pull me out while the other released my grip from the steering wheel. And then finally, I was out of the car. Thing 2 then grabbed me by my hair and then threw me across the parking lot like a rag doll. They wouldn't stop repeating, "You're gonna die tonight," as one of them struck me on my jaw. And that's when I really felt it. My jaw dropped, like literally. He then began punching me in my eye, which almost caused me to lose consciousness, and I had to shake my head to keep myself from passing out, as I knew once I did, it would be easier for them to throw me into the river or leave me for dead in the woods. I never understood when people say your life flashes before your eyes, but in that moment, I understood. My life truly flashed before my eyes. I saw both of my sister's faces and my mom's face. They were all smiling, and all I could think about was, I don't want my mom to find my body floating in this river or in the woods. I kept praying to God that this wouldn't be the end of me, the finality of my life. With all of the adrenaline rushing through my body, I didn't really feel any pain. I only thought of my family in those moments. While all this is going on, Calvin is nowhere to be heard or seen. As far as I knew, he just remained in the passenger seat. Thing 3 then said to put me in the trunk, and that's when I truly knew I was gonna die. When all of a sudden, Thing 1 says no to that, and they all throw my stuff out of the car and leave me alone. They get back in the car with Calvin still in the passenger seat motionless. They then peel out of the parking lot with my backpack and phone. I run behind a nearby tree with my stuff and just wait until I can no longer see their taillights. I then start walking the opposite way, hiding behind trees, as I'm afraid they'll come back and finish the job by running me over. I keep walking for maybe about 10 minutes until I encounter a couple, and I ask them to use a phone to call a taxi for me. They can clearly see the state I'm in, and they suggest they walk me to a nearby hospital, which I decline because at this point with everything that's happened to me, I just wanted to get home. They say that they don't have a phone, but that they can walk me to the Quick Trip gas station where I'll be able to call a taxi. Up until this point, I didn't know how badly I was injured until I got to the Quick Trip and people were looking at me like I had 3 heads. I call a taxi and make my way to the bathroom. It was when I saw myself in the mirror, when I saw the left side of my jaw was literally hanging down much lower than my right side. And that's when it hit me when I think that they might have broken my jaw. I go back outside to wait for the taxi, and by the time I get back home, I realize it's now almost 3 a.m. They had me for almost 4 hours. By that point, the adrenaline is starting to wear down, so everything now, especially my jaw, starts to really hurt. I decided to roll up a blunt, as I think that it's going to take away the pain as well as my shakiness. While rolling up the blunt, I realized that I couldn't stick my tongue out, and that if I tried it would hurt like hell, but I just figured that once I smoked it would feel better. I rolled up, lit the blunt, and tried to inhale, then realizing I couldn't inhale or even lick my lips. My jaw pain was now way past a reasonable amount of pain, so I decided to drive myself to the hospital and just gave a bullcrap story about what happened, which I'm sure they never believed because we all know that a fall wouldn't have caused that much damage. I ended up with a broken jaw in 2 different areas, which required my mouth to be wired shut for 4 weeks, and I also had to be on an all-liquid diet since I could only drink through a straw. I also had a black eye, a bruised-up body, and a very bruised neck and chest. I'm 90% sure Calvin set this whole thing up to rob me and just acted as if he was passed out in the passenger seat, because they never threatened his life or pulled him out of the car. And he was also the only one I told about going to Colorado that night. And no, I didn't get the cops involved, as what they stole was drug money, and I would have ended up in major trouble myself. I eventually found out who was behind the ski masks, and I got my best friend and his cousin to deal with them. Needless to say, I deleted and blocked Calvin, and of course, I left that life behind. I am now 5 years sober and have severe PTSD from this unfortunate event, but it made me want a career and turn my life around. So I returned to school, and I'm now an EMT with a much better life.